Hello and welcome to Salute Your Sports. Kamen Entchev here with Tom Casselman. We are ready for your NBA playoff preview. First, we start with the final two playing games. Who wins them? Who gets the 8 seeds out east and west? Then we move on to our picks for the Eastern Conference, the Western Conference Finals. Both of us quickly take a look at each of the individual series in the first round, but mainly focusing on who makes the conference final games and who ultimately makes the finals. And who wins the whole thing, the NBA Finals, man. It's going to be a lot of fun. Should be a wide open field this year. A lot of good discussion. I mean, I think the Nuggets and the Celtics obviously are probably the favorites, but there's a lot of teams, a lot of series that are not as easy as they have been in the past. Plus, we have our betting locks of the week, sports trivia, and more. I can't wait to get started, Tom. How are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic and really looking forward to this NBA playoffs because we kind of casually check in. It's not like the NFL where we're watching mostly every single game, every single season because of that nice regimented schedule. With the length of the NBA season, it's kind of like periodically checking and catching games here and there along the ways. In
I've
addition
tried to watch more, but I know we don't always talk about it on the show, of course.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's really going to be an interesting playoffs because I know you were really pushing for Lakers and Warriors to make to come out of that play-in tournament.
We were close.
But we're seeing with, you said the Nuggets are a prohibitive, betting favorite, gambling favorite, pick favorite overall, even if you're not wagering. And yet OKC has taken the number 1 seed, a young up-and-coming team. The Minnesota Timberwolves are the 3 seed out west. Meanwhile, in the Eastern Conference, thanks in no small part to Joel Embiid having a torn meniscus, Philadelphia is the 7th seed. And that's kind of allowed teams like the New York Knicks to be the 2 seed. We've got the Cavaliers and the Magic in a 4-5 spot. So I think we've got 2 compelling conference playoffs for different reasons. The West very heavily loaded. In the East, it's kind of who's going to emerge and go up against Boston, because it definitely feels like Boston is the top-heavy team, whereas with Denver, I mean, I'm pretty confident with their chances of making it to the conference finals, but they do have a bit of a difficult path going up first against the LA Lakers, and then whoever wins between the Timberwolves and the Suns. So a lot of interesting stuff. But before we get there,
I know we got the play-ins. I want to say one thing, Tom, before we get into the whole thing. I don't think there's going to be any sweep in these playoffs, and I don't think there's a single series. Like, obviously, there's surprises, but there's not a single series that would shock me. I think this is probably the first time I can ever think of the NBA playoffs where legitimately any seed could beat anybody at any moment. And I know
you think the Bulls could beat the Celtics, or a Jimmy Butler less Miami Heat could beat the Celtics.
If Miami gets past the Bulls, I don't think the Bulls can do it. If Miami gets past the Bulls, they have beaten the Celtics multiple times the last few years, including on the road. Now, I would pick the Celtics, but if Miami got an 8-1 upset, it would not shock me. I'll say that.
But Butler's out multiple weeks. Like, you can't really overcome that if you're Miami. I don't think. I mean, if any team could, it would be them. But I'm not giving them any chance of that. Regardless,
Jimmy Butler, he might come back sooner if he needs to. I'll tell you that.
Early reporting on the injury is multiple weeks for that injury recovery. Of course, we don't have anything definitive yet, but that brings us to the play-in games where the Lakers over the Pelicans have secured the 7th spot. The 76ers over the Heat in the Eastern Conference have secured the 7th spot, which leads us to our matchups on Friday. We have the Kings and the Pelicans as the Kings handily knocked the Warriors out of playoff contention, and the Bulls, of course, coming up with a big win over the Atlanta Hawks. So, Kamen, let's start way out west. Let's go with the Kings and the Pelicans, between a couple of teams that are interesting. I mean, the Kings were in the playoffs against the Warriors, I believe, last season,
as the 2
Pelicans
seed and lost,
fighting for a chance. Yeah,
yeah. This is going to be a pretty interesting one. I know the betting line is -1.5, I believe, Tom. I'm going to go with the Kings here for the simple fact that they're healthier. Zion Williamson, I really feel for the kid. I mean, honestly, he went out there and balled out against the Lakers, had 40 points, and gets hurt at the end of the game. I don't know what would have happened. I would have leaned the Lakers, but, it's possible the Pelicans win that game if Zion doesn't get hurt. That's a massive, massive injury, Tom. to Zion Williamson. And I got to say, Brandon Ingram is just coming off an injury as well. He just played his last 2 games against the Lakers, limited minutes. He was 4 for 12 the last game, very ineffective. So essentially, your best player is out. Your second best player has probably let Radar out here in a second. Let me finish up my Pelicans chat. Look at Radar. Radar, come here, buddy. You want to go outside the door? Come here, Radar. This guy, he doesn't like the sports banter. He's still upset about the Barcelona game yesterday. I'll tell you that, Tom.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But I'll tell you, so I think that really does hurt the Pelicans. Essentially, you're without your best player. Your second best player is playing maybe half the game. He's not fully healthy. Meanwhile, the Kings, I know, Malik Monk is out, but he's a solid player. Their third, fourth option. But their 2 superstars, Fox and Sabonis, are both there. Keegan Murray emerged with a 32-point game last time out. Also, keep this in mind, Tom. The Pelicans are actually not a good home team. They're 21-20 at home. They actually have a better road record than a home record. Meanwhile, the Kings are actually a pretty solid road team. So I think, the home court doesn't really help the Pelicans. I mean, it didn't help them on Sunday in that last game against the Lakers, or on what was that, Tuesday they last played. So I think for whatever reason, New Orleans does not feed off that home court energy like many teams do. I know the Kings very much feed off of it. One of the loudest arenas in sports. So I think this could be a total toss-up if both teams were healthy. And it's by no means a no-brainer because, CJ McCollum could get hot. It is a one-game scenario. But I think the Kings are more healthy. The Kings are playing better right now. I do think the Kings will win. And I guess 1.5 points. I think they'll cover as well.
Well, it's actually down to 1 if you want to take a little bit of an extra edge there. I'm 100% with you on the Kings. It is absolutely devastating for the Pelicans that, Zion Williamson injuries have been bugging him his entire career. Played 70 games this season, was absolutely outstanding. I mean, the Lakers didn't really have an answer for him. And then, of course, with that injury late, he's out of the game. And perhaps the Pelicans' playoff chances are completely wiped out at this point. I mean, I think that the Kings, like you said, they're a bit healthier, and more importantly, with their top guys, they are healthier. So I like the Kings to win this one as well. And again, it's just, I'll touch on this for the Eastern Conference play-in game as well. And you know that I'm not a super big fan of this play-in scenario. I mean, we've got a team in the New Orleans Pelicans and the Miami Heat that, for all intents and purposes, without a play-in tournament, earned playoff berths. And they are now, of course, at risk having both of their most important players, or the most important player on both teams, going out for injury in these matchups. I mean, 76ers won by a single point.
If Jimmy Butler didn't get hurt, he probably would have won that game.
Exactly. And that's the sort of thing where, like, these teams over the course of 82 games earned the chance to be there. I can understand a little bit with the Western Conference, given that you had, the Lakers or the Lakers were the 8th spot. But like with the Kings and the Warriors being like a couple games back, I can understand a play-in scenario. But when you're looking at the Bulls that are 7 games out, the Hawks that are 10 games out, the fact that I think both of those lower seeded teams can make it now due to injury for the opposing teams.
I mean, the Bulls and Hawks had injuries too, though, Tom. That's part of the game, unfortunately. And again, I don't.
I mean, in the game itself,
but I'll devil's advocate this to you and say that if you don't want to be in the play-in tournament, get a top 6 seed. Because I would argue that the NBA already gets too many playoff teams. More than half the league is already in the playoffs. You don't want to be away from that play-in tournament. Get yourself a top 6 seed. Let me let Radar out. I'll let you muddle that. Let me let Radar out. Radar, come on, buddy. You guys want to get out of the room? It's too warm. You guys don't like sports talk. Go out. These guys, they're not big on the sports talk, Tom Casselman.
No, they are not.
All right.
No, it's
so.
It's just that, like, with
I don't know, man. I get your point, but at the same time, I think you look at, like, I think, what is it? Baseball is now football 7. Is baseball 7 too? I mean, yeah. I know there used to be like 6 each. I think basketball is getting the most playoff teams of any sport. I know hockey as well, but
Mhm.
I get what you're saying, but this is exciting stuff. You know, you don't want to leave it up to chance. Get yourself a top 6 seed. Simple as that. And I know you can argue this and that, but you look at the West, the difference between like the 5 seed or even like the
Mhm.
4 seed and the 10 seed was like 4 games. 5 games? Let me pull it up here. Let me
Well,
look
I
at
just
these
if the
NBA
argument is make
standings.
sure you succeed, I don't understand why it can't equally be said. You've got 82 games to get a top 8 spot, the way that it used to be, especially considering each conference has more teams in the playoffs than out, which, 8 in, 7 out.
The
I know it's more intriguing.
Clippers and Warriors 5-game difference between 4 and 10 seed. That's how
You had
close
80,
the
you had
West
82
was.
games. You had 82 games,
To get a
and
top
now it's
6
down
seed. I agree.
to get a top 8 seed.
Yeah,
I know why
well,
the NBA did it. I know why they've contrived the sort of thing. But again, to proponents to say, oh, it works because X, Y, or Z, more often than not, the teams that are 7th and 8th already are getting in. And in this case, I think the Kings, who would not have been a top 8 team, they're going to get in the playoffs and moving over to the Eastern Conference. I think the Bulls are going to get into the playoffs as well. The Heat are a team that are built more than others to withstand injuries and loss to their superstars, but Jimmy Butler being gone, that's just too significant of a loss, in my opinion. The Bulls played really well against the Atlanta Hawks. This has been a Jekyll and Hyde type of team where they will have some absolute bedwetting performances against lower seeded teams or lower ranked teams. I mean, having multiple losses
Kobe.
to Wizards, Pistons, what have you. But they're also capable of getting up and winning big matchups as well. I think the edge goes to the Bulls
T-Wolves.
here. I mean, I don't understand how the line has moved on this one. I mean, the Heat came in favored. I think it opened up at 1.5. It's now a 2-point spread. I'm easily taking the other side of that because
I think it
the
was two
Bulls
and a
are
half last
healthier.
night, but I don't know how much,
Oh, so
depending on the book.
yeah,
It
depending on
went
where you're
from
looking.
two
Yeah.
and a half last night to 1.5 overnight, I believe, with the
Okay.
Butler injury. So it did go down a little bit. It was 2.5 for
Yeah.
Miami. It's 1.5 for Miami now, minus one and a
No,
half.
it's 2 for me.
Did you see it at
It
2?
was
See,
two and
I see it
it was
on
at 1.5
DraftKings.
on. It
Yeah, I
was
see
at
it.
1.5 on Bovada. Now it's at 2 on Bovada. So it's just one of those
Eh,
things where it's like, you lose the
my book
most
is
important
different.
player. I mean, take the Bovada book in that case, but you lose your
Yeah,
most important player in Jimmy Butler, and you're still favored. I mean, yes, the Heat are still a talented, deep team. I'm just leaning the Bulls on this one, and it just kind of feels. It doesn't feel great as a Bulls fan saying like, "Oh, we're getting in
I
to the
love it.
playoffs." They're getting into the playoffs in no small part because of this contrived scenario and also Jimmy Butler's injury. I think that's not a great way to get in. It doesn't really send a great message, especially considering the Bulls had a losing record on the season. It doesn't send. I think it sends the wrong message. But then again, that's a bigger picture issue for a different show. As we are not a Bulls centric show.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, Tom. So first off, again, we completely disagree on the play, and I absolutely
Oh
love
yeah.
it. And we're not going to spend too much time because I can tell you that I won't convince you, and you won't convince me. That's just the nature
Well,
of the beast. But what we're
a
going to
quick
say,
clarification. I understand. So I can understand finding it entertaining because I think it's
yes,
entertaining. I don't think that it is just.
okay,
That's my distinction between the two. I
sure,
like it. Like I think that for all intents and purposes, Miami should be the 8 seeds. 76ers should be the 7th seed, and the fact that that's now in jeopardy because of an injury within this specific scenario within
sure.
these extra
I
games.
I disagree just because I think it makes every game matter even more. Like it makes it more important to have a top 6 seed versus a 7, 8, 9, 10. But that's again, we're not going to agree on that. But
Mhm.
I personally love the playing tournament. I think I would love to see more sports go to that playing tournament. But we'll see. We'll see if that happens. As for this game, man, how about Kobe White last night? 42
Mhm.
points, career high, even though I don't think it's going to technically count because these numbers don't count for anything. I did win
Yeah.
money on the game, Bulls -3. I also hit the over. I also hit the live over. Thanks to that Trae Young 3 at the end, by the way. It looked like they were all going to dribble out the clock, and I was going to be half a point short. And Trae Young
Ha.
pulls up from like a logo 3 and makes it there at the end. So thank you, Trae Young, for not showing class at the end of that game. Thank you, sir. I will take those points all day, every day. This is a complete toss up. because as you said it, we never know what Bulls team is going to come out there. This is the team that, won at Minnesota, one of the best teams in the game. Then they lose against Washington, lose against Detroit. They always have these random games. And, the Miami Heat is a winning organization. They've always been a team that overachieves. Jimmy Butler is obviously, their best player. But, I mean, they do have currently Tyler Hero is playing again. Bam Adebayo is playing. They have a very, very good team. They're at home. I had written down if Jimmy Butler plays, Miami wins. If Jimmy Butler doesn't play, I'm not sure. That's what I have written down. Because I did this research last night before. It was, right. It was after the injury happened, but before the MRI. So obviously you had to wake up this morning, see what the injury news is. So I'm a Bulls fan, Tom. I'm a fan that cheers for your team to get in the playoffs. I hate tanking. I hate rebuilding. I believe that you build a winning culture. So I actually want Chicago to win. I want them to get that playoff experience. Something inside my heart says Miami's going to find a way to win because they always do. They always do. I think it's going to be the same type of game as last year. This was the play-in tournament game last year, the 8-seed game last year. It was very close up until the last minute or two. And then Miami kind of pulled away and beat the Bulls. They were 2-2 this season in regular season matchups. It's like one of those where I'm 50.1% sure in Miami, 49.9% sure in the Bulls. I think given the injury to Jimmy Butler, I think the Bulls have a slightly better roster. They have a slightly more talented team. They are on the road. They are facing Eric Spoelstra in a playoff scenario, which is a big advantage for Miami, I would say, in the coaching arena. So it's just one of these feelings. I'm not betting on this game either way. Actually, I am betting on it because I'm betting on the over because it is grossly low, the over-under total. I mean, grossly low, 206.5 for an NBA game in 2024. So I might be betting on the over in this game, but I will not be betting on the spread because this one could go either way. I'll go devil's advocate to disagree with you. I hope I'm wrong, Tom, because I want the Bulls to win. There's just something about Miami in the playoffs. They're always dangerous. I guess without Butler, assuming he is out for a few weeks, I guess it would be fairly surprising if they beat Boston, but they have had Boston's number. A lot of that is because of Jimmy's Butler. I'll pick the Celtics, obviously, in the next round either way, but Miami just always finds a way in the playoffs. So I'll give the Heat a close win over the Bulls. Maybe it's like a Tyler Hero buzzer beater, like tie game. This guy pulls up from like half court and hits a three at the buzzer and they win and cover because that's how it goes as a better, right?
Well, always be sure to shop around for your numbers. 205 on that over-under on Bovada if you're interested. But that's enough about the playing game, as I don't think either of these teams, regardless of who wins, are destined to go very far in the playoffs. Let's talk about some playoff paths here. Again, starting out in the West Conference. Of course, the Western Conference last year was Nuggets and Lakers, with the Nuggets picking up a clean sweep. That's actually going to be a very, very fun and interesting first-round matchup there. After some folks were doing some ludicrous takes on like, oh, should the Lakers like throw the game against the Pelicans so that they avoid the Nuggets? The answer is no, because tomorrow is promised to no one. You never know when, again, with this playing scenario, you never know when your top player might roll an ankle, suffer some sort of injury. So
should have won more games this year.
You take what you can get. So with the Western Conference Finals paths, I mean, for me, there's so many good teams. There's so many good reasons to pick different teams. I mean, I think that the the Mavericks Clippers matchup is a really, really fun one. It's unfortunate that Kawhi Leonard, his status is questionable for the course of the series. I don't think he'll be playing game one or maybe even game two, as I don't think he's resumed basketball activities with some swelling in his knee. Of course, that would have been a very, very compelling matchup at full health. Still could be as presently constituted, but I think that's a really, really fun matchup. But ultimately, for the teams, I'm going with the Denver Nuggets to make the Western Conference Finals. I think they have the toughest path with, of course, the Lakers and Anthony Davis, LeBron James being one of the top two-man tandems. So I guess like just to keep like everything like back and forth a little bit, let's start with one kind of like pod. So out of the Lakers Nuggets, and then Timberwolves and Suns. I've got the Nuggets coming out, and I have them going up with a nice matchup. I, I think I'm leaning a little bit toward the Suns on this one, but I mean the Timberwolves, the way that they play defense and the balance that they have would surprise me. But I think those are four teams that if they weren't all playing against each other, I could definitely see picking one of them. But I'll go with the Nuggets out of that little pod.
Yeah, first off, I think it's very, very compelling and interesting because all 8 teams in the Western Conference playoffs, there's reasons to make for them winning. I also think that all 8 teams have at least 2 superstars, great 1-2 duos. I mean, look at the Nuggets with Jokic and Murray. You go down to the Thunder with Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Chet Holmgren, who's obviously a lot on defense as well, but his overall play is fantastic. You look at the obviously the 3 seed is the T-Wolves with Anthony Edwards. He's really good. Karl Anthony Towns, what's the update on Cat? I think what was the update? I know they were trying to get him back. So Karl Anthony Towns, though, he's a really good duo. Obviously, the Clippers without Paul George, if he doesn't play, we have still Paul George and James Harden, although that sounds like a weird one. I'll give you the most.
And Russell Westbrook.
I'll give you the most under-talked duo in the playoffs. A duo that is going to surprise. I don't know if I'm going to use the word surprise, but I think Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving are amazing. There was a game on Sunday I watched. I think it was last weekend on NBA TV or the weekend before. And those 2 guys, they might be the most skilled backcourt of all time. I mean, seriously, like the way they both can pass, they can shoot, they can dribble. They have all the moves, all the bags of tricks. Those 2 guys are incredible together. And if you watch the Mavericks go on their run, they actually have looked really, really good. And they've actually fit into well together. I know it didn't work last year, but everything takes an year or 2. So as far as the pod that you're talking about, I am ultimately going to go with the Nuggets. I did want to pick the Lakers. So hold on, real quickly. So yeah, Karl Anthony Towns did play a few days ago. So he is going to be in this series. So the Edwards and Towns duo is there, obviously coming off an injury. But I wanted to pick the Lakers to beat the Thunder because the Lakers have beaten the Thunder in recent years. I think the playoff experiences, had it been Lakers Thunder, I would have picked the Lakers to win that first round matchup. I think the Nuggets have the playoff experience and they have Nikola Jokic, and there's no answer for him. Anthony Davis should be able to go toe-to-toe, at least close. I don't think he's going to be better than Jokic, but he should be one of the guys that is most built to stop him, given how athletic he is, given that he's good on defense, he's tall, and he couldn't stop him last year in that sweep.
And he was really good last year, too.
Yeah, and Jokic made so many of these, like, fading away off one leg, like, crazy shots. And I was actually looking at Davis, and I was hearing people talk about Davis, and Davis has, like, this, like, look on his face, like, he almost can't believe it. Like, who is this guy? He's not super athletic. I should be better than him, but this dude is making shots over me that nobody else, quite frankly, has ever made against Anthony Davis. So I think the Nuggets are going to win that series. I think it might be a 6 or 7 game series. Like I said, I would not be shocked if the Lakers do win the series because D'Angelo Russell is playing really good right now. You look at Austin Reeves is playing really good right now. Those 2 players are playing at a much higher level, especially Russell, than they were last year in the playoffs. D'Angelo Russell was non-existent last year. Now, all of a sudden, he's been a legitimate third scorer. Reeves is a ball handler. Also, I mean, even Russell's a ball handler. So LeBron could get some possessions off, not handling the ball, not having to do everything. Davis is good on both ends. Hachimura can light it up as well. So this Laker team, this is not going to be a sweep. I'm looking at 6 to 7 games. I'm going to pick the Nuggets to win, but if the Lakers do win the series, I would not be shocked. As for the other series, Thunder and Kings, I was kind of mentioning, or actually you said Suns and T-Wolves, right? Suns and
T-Wolves is the other one in that pod.
Yeah, so Suns and T-Wolves, Phoenix Suns, Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, these are 2 of the best scorers in the league. It's such a great duo. Bradley Beal has played better of late.
Mhm.
I think there's too much experience. There's too much scoring. Like, Anthony Edwards is really, really good, like really good, but I think he would be the third best player on the Suns. Like, I'm not saying that I would take him head and shoulders above him, but if I was forced to pick between Edwards and Booker, I'm taking Devin Booker. And I'm still taking Kevin Durant over both. So, in my
Mhm.
opinion, Cat and Towns are really good. Edwards, but I think the Suns have the two best players in the series in Durant and Booker. I think Phoenix wins a close series, could be 6-7 games. Again, could go either way. But they just literally
Mhm.
played each other at the end of the year, and we saw Phoenix completely clobber them. I know it's one game, Tom, but I think the Phoenix Suns as the 6th seed, it's just so weird. Like 6th seed Kevin Durant, 7th
Mhm.
seed LeBron James. These playoffs are terrifying, Tom.
Yeah,
Even though
we're
I'm going to pick
gonna
the Nuggets because of their size, because of Jokic, I am going to pick the Suns to knock out the T-Wolves. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really interesting playoff where it's kind of the difference of okay, who has like some of the bigger star power, and naturally, like at this point in the NBA trajectory, a lot of the stars are on the older side of things. So we have had Kevin Durant miss a little bit of time, and the Suns kind of have to gel a little bit without having a true point guard. That does still matter at the NBA, even though there are more players who are like skilled ball handlers at the NBA level than we see at say like the college level, what have you, where it's like, oh, if they don't have one point guard, nothing works in a college offense. That's absolutely not true in the NBA. So you kind of work around it. It really, I think, is going to come down to some of the quote role players or maybe like second, third tier stars. Like how well does Mike Conley play? How well does Rudy Gobert play? Because he doesn't really close out games. So what impact can he make? Kind of leading up to those last 6 minutes of the fourth quarter type of
Overrated.
situation. Uh,
Overrated. I
he
agree with
fits within a
Shaq.
role.
Rudy
He fits a
Gobert,
certain role.
overrated.
So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the next pod that we're going to talk about with the Western Conference. Of course, the Oklahoma City Thunder with the number one overall seed facing the winner of the Pelicans Kings matchup. Um, I mean, the Kings definitely have the most playoff experience, although that's not saying much out of those squads. But I think that OKC just has a ton of talent, a ton of youth on that team. They might be the type of team that actually has a little bit of a benefit of no experience because it's like you guys are just talented. You're not afraid of anybody. Just go out there and win. And of course, there's going to be, I think, a really compelling matchup. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people pick the winner of the Clippers Mavericks to be the other representative in the Western Conference Finals. Like I said, Kawhi Leonard, his injury a little bit unknown. I clicked on the Dallas Mavericks. All their starters were day to day, but I think that was purely because the end of the season, they didn't really play their main guys the last couple of games because there wasn't anything they could do to improve playoff position or lose playoff position.
Sure.
So I think the Mavericks will be fully healthy for this series. Out of the four teams here, I'm going to go with the young guys. I'm going to go with the OKC Thunder to make it to the East or to the Western Conference Finals. I think that they have a ton of talent on the team. They're healthy. They're deep. And I think that with the Clippers, they're going to run into some issues where, we don't know, like I said, the health of Kawhi Leonard, that is significant. Maybe if he were 100% healthy, I would actually be leaning a little bit more for the Clippers to come out of this section. With Dallas, they've got two really great players with Irving and with Doncic, and then they have like a really solid squad of support guys around them. I don't know if they're necessarily like deep enough though to go up against a team like OKC that's running out a much longer rotation. And I mean, haven't really talked much about Chet Holmgren this season and the year that he has had. In a
The Wemby.
non-Victor Wembanyama year, he would be a Rookie of the Year shoe, and I think he's been
Absolutely.
absolutely phenomenal for the Thunder. So I'm going to go OKC coming out of this pod. I think that there is a lot of positives with this squad, and I think that honestly, this section is a good bit easier. They dodged not having to face the Lakers as a potential round one because that would have been a very, very intriguing series. I'm all for the Western Conference rematch between Lakers and Nuggets being compelling theater. I think that pretty much old versus new would be a really compelling one as well that we're not going to get to see.
Sure.
Kamen, who do you like out
Yeah.
of this
So
pod with
first
the
off,
bracket?
OKC starting lineup is younger than the North Carolina starting lineup at the March Madness. I know
Yeah.
I listed that stat a few weeks ago to my detriment, but that's okay. This is such a young team, and it's very hard to know what to expect because I know more often than not, the expectation is that a young team folds, that they don't really deliver. But we have seen the other side of things too, where a young team plays freely, and does do
Mhm.
really well. It's kind of interesting because I look at the Western Conference and it's very intriguing. I think the Denver Nuggets are a really good team, but I think we can agree that they're not an all-time great team. But I think this is probably the deepest any conference has ever been in basketball history.
Mm.
And actually, I usually like to form my own opinion, but I was listening to Shannon Sharp and Brian Windhorst argue about this. And Shannon Sharp, he's like what a lot of people are doing in the media, a lot of fans. His whole spiel was this is the worst one seed of all time,
Mhm.
OKC, which is a huge stretch. And Brian Windhorst said, be careful, you might regret these words, because while I completely agree there's not an all-time great team, while I do agree, they are a weaker one seed than normal, Windhorst's point was, Tom, that this is the deepest Western Conference we've ever seen, ever in the history of basketball. And in that deep conference, they were the one seed. So
Mhm.
it was an accomplishment. I know they barely got it. I know they were tied. They won a tiebreaker, but they were the one seed in probably the toughest conference ever. And that has to be given some accolades. You have to give them some respect for that. With that said, I'm going to give them some respect in the first round. I think they knock out the Kings. It's two young teams. OKC is just simply better. They're better on defense.
Mhm.
They have, Fox is good, but Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is better. He is the better superstar in this matchup. So I think the Thunder get past the Kings in the opening round. That Mavericks and Clippers series, I don't know what it is, Tom. Again, it's a feeling thing. I actually think even if Kawhi Leonard were fully healthy, I think the Mavs are marginally better. I think they're a better team.
Mm.
I think that Luka Doncic probably had the most underrated season in the history of basketball. I mean, he became something like the seventh guy ever to score more than 34 points. You look at his points, rebounds, and assists. It's higher than anybody in the NBA right now, higher than Jokic. And I think Jokic is going to get the MVP. In my opinion, like this was labeled as Jokic is the front runner, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is number 2, and Luka Doncic is number 3. Whereas I'm sitting here looking at the numbers, I'm looking at the impact, I'm looking at what they mean to their team. And it's like, for me, I can't decide between Luka and Jokic. I would actually give it to Luka just because he hasn't gotten it. I think
Mm.
his impact in the game is incredible. I think it's weird to say that we are underappreciating just how great he is, because he's putting up these triple doubles with, considerably more efficient field goal percentage than like a Russell Westbrook. And he's basically getting a ton of rebounds for a guard. I mean, he's doing whatever he wants to on the court, Luka Doncic. Now, this guy is absolutely spectacular. He's actually, I think I looked up some numbers. His career total for points, rebounds, and assists is like second or third in NBA history. And the guy that's
Mm.
first is Will Chamberlain, because he got 25 rebounds over his career. That was his average back when he played against guys that, couldn't rebound against him, quite frankly. Luka, I think, it feels weird, but he's underappreciated. He's underrated. The season he had is underrated. I know the Thunder got the 1 seed, but I mean, what? They won a few more games than the Mavs. They won the same as the Nuggets. Like, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander all of a sudden is vaulted into this MVP discussion because they got the 1 seed, because he was the best player. Had they lost like 2 or 3 more games, he's probably not vaulted in there as much. So he's had a great season, but I will tell you he's a distant third in my MVP. Distant third. I think Jokic and Luka, with what they did, are so far ahead of him. I mean, Luka led the NBA in scoring, led the NBA in points, rebounds, and assists. And Kyrie Irving is playing some incredible basketball. Just the last, 2-3 weeks, that crazy buzzer beater. He had a 45-point game or whatever last week. He's got that playoff experience, that playoff pedigree. The Dallas Mavericks are coming in hot. Right now, to me, they are the second best team in the NBA right now, the Dallas Mavericks. So I'm going to pick them over the Clippers. Even if Leonard was healthy, I would have no hesitation in picking the Mavs. I'll pick them over the Thunder, and I would pick them over anybody in the East. The only team I'm picking over Dallas is Denver. I think this Dallas team is gelling at the right time. They were in the Western Conference Finals a couple years ago, by the way, without Kyrie. I know Jalen Brunson was there, but he wasn't, the player he is now. I think the 1-2 duo of Luka and Kyrie is going to prove to be too much against OKC because, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, not as good as Luka. He also doesn't have a legitimate number 2 guy for scoring. Like their second scorer is more of a scoring by committee. I know Chet Holmgren is the second best player because of everything he does, rebounding, shot blocking, but there's not really a second consistent scorer for OKC. So I think I like the Mavs a lot out of this pod. I like the Mavs to ultimately make the Western Conference Finals. And we got a matchup of the 2 best players in the league this season, Jokic versus Doncic. Let's say the 2 best European players, although Giannis is obviously there as well. But, this could be the 2 best players in the world right now, Tom. Could be an awesome matchup. A guy from Slovenia versus the guy from Serbia. How far has the NBA come, right? The dream team, they got all the eyeballs on everybody. Well, now we're talking about the 2 best players in the game being European guys with, let's be honest, pretty average athleticism. I think, Doncic and Jokic, I know obviously Jokic uses his sheer size, his height. So he does have that athletic edge because of size, but these guys aren't jumping over everybody. They're not, outrunning everybody due to speed. But these 2 dudes are the best. We get the 2 best players in the game matching up in the Western Conference Finals.
It's a different kind of athleticism because we do quantify athleticism as jump high, run fast, hit a ball far type of thing. Whereas there's also athleticism in terms of body balance and body control, and that's what we see out of the 2 of them the most. Like if you watch Luka Doncic play, he almost prefers having you like right in his hip pocket because then he kind of knows, okay, how can I leverage around you? It's a combination of smarts along with a different type of athleticism than we typically associate with star athletes. But like hand-eye coordination. You look at some of those shots that Jokic was hitting over Victor Wembanyama, where it's just like, okay, I'm going to be 7 feet tall and have a floater, which is typically like what we'd see from a Tony Parker, for example, for the San Antonio Spurs as a means of scoring. So a different type of athleticism. But you mentioned Jalen Brunson. We're going to use him as a perfect segue over to the Eastern Conference.
So real quick, before we go there, we're gonna give our predictions after. We'll do it by conferences. So we'll pause for dramatic effect, although I think we kind of both know where we're headed. But Nuggets and Mavs for me, Nuggets and Thunder for you.
Yep. Okay. And then in the Eastern Conference, we're going to have a pod of the Knicks against the 76ers, which is going to be really compelling given the Sixers in a lower seed in no small part because, like I said earlier in the show, Joel Embiid missing significant time with a meniscus. He's back. Surprise scratch for a game against the Brooklyn Nets to end the season. But he's for the most part healthy. He's one of the few players where you can't necessarily take that as a given, unfortunately, with the way his career has unfolded. But that's going to be a really, really fun matchup. And then we also have a 3-6 of the Milwaukee Bucks, missing Giannis Antetokounmpo for a while, probably, against the Indiana Pacers, a team that have played with, a lot of pace this season, having a really, really efficient offense, not necessarily as much on defense, but they find themselves in a situation where maybe they could be an upset pick team. Kamen, who do you like out of this pod in the Eastern Conference?
So you're talking about the Bucks and Pacers
Bucks,
and
Pacers,
Sixers.
Knicks, 76ers. Yep.
Well, I'm going to go with an upset here. I don't even know how much of an upset this is if they're both there. I'm going to pick the Sixers over the Knicks. Why is that? Because I think the Sixers are a better team. Why are the Sixers a 7 seed? Because Joel Embiid missed multiple games. Not only did he miss time, Tyrese Maxey, their second best player, missed a bunch of time. So it doesn't take a genius to figure it out. But if your 2 best players are missing multiple games at the same time, mind you. There was a span of time where they're both out at the exact same time. That's the only reason the Sixers are even in the same picture as a 7 seed, because otherwise, Philadelphia is either the second or the third best team of the East. I mean, I think depending on how healthy, how the Bucks are gelling, we're sitting here talking about who's the biggest threat to Boston. Is it Philly or is it Milwaukee? So I think Philadelphia is going to win this matchup. I think the Knicks have pulled a classic Tom Thibodeau of overachieving this season. I'm not saying they're not a good basketball team. They are, but they have definitely overachieved to get the 2 seed. Really, to be honest with you, they wouldn't have gotten the 2 seed had Giannis been healthy. The Bucks almost kind of, like, I don't want to say gifted it to him, but they really choked it away late. They basically gifted it to New York. I think Jalen Brunson's a fantastic basketball player. I think he's having a career year. I think he's going to be really good for years to come. I don't know if he ever repeats what he did this year. Things were going good for him. He's had a great, great season. I think, even missing Julius Randle seemingly hasn't hurt them. I think it catches up to them in the playoffs, though. I think having that second guy, because, Jalen Brunson doesn't really have a number 2 guy on the Knicks. I mean, who's the other guy you look to? It seems like he's been doing everything. At what point does that catch up to you? In a playoff series against a team that has a chance to prepare against you, they see you every single day. At some point, it catches up to you. So I think, Joel Embiid is the best player in the series, and Tyrese Maxey is the 3rd best player in the series. And Embiid, knock on wood, I'm not the biggest Embiid fan, but I hate seeing guys get injured. I want to see what this guy can do when he's healthy. He actually has looked really good coming back from the injury. Looks refreshed. He's played really good basketball, especially in the 4th quarter. I mean, that playing game against the Heat, normally the 4th quarter you run out of juice. He didn't. He is one of the best players in the game, Joel Embiid. I think the Sixers win a tight series, 6 to 7 games. I just think they have more talent. And, this Knicks team probably is more of a 4-5 seed talent-wise, whereas Philly is a 2-3 seed. We just saw the ball bounce in New York's favor. By the way, the East was also really close. I mean, they lose a few more games, they could be the 5 or 6 seed easily. So I think the Sixers upset the Knicks. Even though I don't even know the spread, but I'm guessing it's a virtual pick 'em for who wins this series. I don't know if you have it pulled up. Who's the favorite?
I do. So in terms of a series winner, it's a toss-up, -110 for both teams to win the series for game 1. The Knicks are currently favored by 3, I imagine, because home court advantage.
So I'll go Philly, and I don't even think the Knicks have a big guy to stop Embiid either, by the way.
Yeah, like Hartenstein. Hartenstein is perhaps one. I'm going to go with the 76ers coming out of this entire pod as well. I'm picking them in an upset over the Knicks, which kind of gives me a moment's pause. It wouldn't surprise me if Tom Thibodeau, just because he is able to get, water from a stone, just squeezing every last drop of talent that he has before him, it wouldn't surprise me at all if the Knicks, quote unquote, shock people by defeating the 76ers.
No, this is a total toss-up. Total toss-up.
Yeah, it's going to be a really fun series, and actually kind of plays into another idea that I've thrown out there of the playoff matchup should be determined by your regular season seeding, because part of the reason why we're seeing the Knicks here instead of the Milwaukee Bucks is toward the end of the season, the Bucks said, you know what, we're going to duck whoever comes out of that 7th spot, whether it's the Heat, whether it is the 76ers, and I think that's a mistake, because I think the Pacers are really dangerous as well. I'm picking 2 upsets here. I'm picking the 76ers to face the Pacers
I gotta pick the other one.
in this as like a semifinal type of thing. I do think the 76ers come out ultimately again. This is assuming all the regular caveats of no major injuries, yada yada. But if Embiid's healthy enough to be playing at his peak level, like you said, Tyrese Maxey, he's going to most likely be the most improved player, although he was already at a really high level.
Bulls beast.
It's one of those awards where
Kobe's more improved. Maxey's better, but Kobe White's more improved.
Right, and it's just, I think, a poorly defined type of award. But between the two of them, and that's not even mentioning a solid supporting cast. You've got Buddy Hield coming off the bench, being a great 3-point shooter. Tobias Harris just kind of does what Tobias Harris does, is kind of a
Batum
stretch
came out of
four.
nowhere last
Batum
game.
came out of nowhere. We might be talking about him a little bit later. Kyle Lowry provides a nice veteran presence. So there's a good balanced team here in Philadelphia. I think that they're going to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals as a 7 seed,
I
where
got to
they're going to
pick the
meet up.
Bucks one. I haven't picked the Bucks yet. Yeah. Well,
Wait,
I want to hear.
are you
I
going
want to hear why you're picking the Pacers over the Bucks. Then I'll make my pick
to?
for that one.
I like the Pacers' depth. I mean, Giannis being out is a hugely significant thing. I mean, you look
Absolutely.
at Damian Lillard, his numbers this year, his efficiency has been down overall. I don't know how much of that is due to age, how much of that is due to trying to mesh within a new system. But if you're saying that your top two tandem is Damian Lillard and Chris Middleton, going up against Tyrese Halliburton, who's had a phenomenal year. Pascal Siakam has been really, really strong for the Pacers. I just think that the Pacers are gelling a little bit right now. I think that they're an imperfect team, but they're going up against a Bucks team that, without Giannis, without an MVP, perennial MVP caliber player, the Bucks are very flawed as well. This is a team that, of course, if Giannis were healthy, I could very easily be picking them to come out of this pod. But with that injury, I think that that's significant enough that the Pacers can go ahead and sneak out like a 7-game win, something along those lines, maybe shock some people. I would go
Well,
Pacers on this one.
that's what the Bucks are saying, and this is not, we'll see, but they're hopeful that Giannis will play in the series. He's
Mhm.
not going to play game one, maybe doesn't play game two, but they're hopeful he plays. The longer this series goes, the more it favors Milwaukee if Giannis comes back, because I think he is, without question, the best player in the series. Uh, I think Dame Lillard is a guy that, likes the moment. For whatever reason, he hasn't worked out as well as expected in Milwaukee, but I know this isn't a true, game, but, he won the 3-point contest at the All-Star game. He won the MVP at the All-Star game. We've seen him deliver clutch moments, even this season. That crazy buzzer beater he had, we've seen him get so many clutch moments in the playoffs. End of a fourth quarter, a close game. Who do I trust in the court? It's Dame Lillard. I think I trust him more than Tyrese Halliburton. I actually think in some ways, Giannis being out for a couple of days could help Dame, couple games rather, hopefully it's just a couple, could help Dame Lillard get his rhythm. He's going to get more shots, more looks, more of the focus on the offense, which is, quite frankly, what he's been used to. He hasn't been used to being the number 2 scoring option. So I think Milwaukee's going to find a way to win this series. I think, obviously, the Pacers haven't played great the second half of the year. I think they were an upcoming young team, and they kind of struggled a little bit. They almost got into the play-in tournament as well. So I think Milwaukee's going to find a way to win. I mean, they still have Dame Lillard. They have Chris Middleton, a guy that's been good in the
Mhm.
playoffs. Bobby Portis does a really good job off the bench. They have some pieces there. Brook Lopez is a good big guy that can stretch the floor. I'm going to take Milwaukee over Indiana, and then this is where I struggle. I think if Embiid is healthy and Giannis isn't, I think the 76ers would win the series. But I'm going to take a little bit of wishful thinking on my part and
Mhm.
say that Giannis is going to somehow come back. Because I don't know if you remember, the NBA Finals against the Suns. You and I did a show where Giannis was doubtful for game one. He plays, has one of the all-time great finals series. We're talking about, is this the best finals performance ever? He puts up 50 in the deciding game. Giannis is, his nickname is the Greek Freak for a reason. He's built different. I think he's had the nagging injury all season long. And in the games he's played, he's put up massive numbers. So it's partly wishful thinking for me, but also partly
Mhm.
I have seen this guy come off of an injury and put up massive numbers. So I'm going to bank on Milwaukee squeezing by the Pacers. Giannis comes back in the next series. He's healthy against Philadelphia, and the Bucks win a close series over Philly. Milwaukee makes the Eastern Conference Finals, Tom.
Yeah, just a quick little blurb about Giannis. Adrian Wojnarowski reports this is a couple days ago. The Bucks are preparing to be without Antetokounmpo calf injury for the beginning of their series with the Pacers. So
Mm-hmm.
just with how long the NBA playoffs go on, absolutely a chance that he comes back. If the Pacers or if the Bucks are able to do enough to extend the series. I could see him possibly coming back. I just know like calf injury, that can be a tricky thing. That if you come back too soon or too abruptly,
That's
that
what
could cause like
Messi's had that for the last 2 years. That's why he's missed so
mhm.
many games. He's had a calf injury the last 2 years.
Yeah, and you don't want that. You don't want to have another injury trying to overcompensate for that. So we'll see how that goes. This next pot, I think, considerably less compelling. I imagine we're both going to have the Boston Celtics beating whoever the eight seed is by a decent margin. Might be a gentleman's sweep at most, but it was funny as you said at the top that you doubt there's going to be any sweeps. I think that this is probably the easiest pick for a sweep, just given how good, how deep the Celtics are against a team like the Chicago Bulls or even a banged up Miami Heat team. I don't think that series is going to go particularly long. And then in a matchup of a couple of teams where there's some star power, you know, we all know who Donovan Mitchell is. He and Jamal Murray were exchanging some significant scoring battles back and forth back when it was
The
Utah
bubble.
against Denver on the West Coast. You know, now here he's in Cleveland playing on a team that has a lot of defense, but really not necessarily big names around him. I think that might change with the playoffs, going up against a Paolo Banchero led Orlando Magic team. I mean, it's a coin flip for me on who wins that particular series. Let's see, looking well, that's actually a bit surprising. Bovada has the series price as -195 for the Cavaliers, plus
Not
165 for the
surprising.
Magic.
Cavs are a
You
better
think
team. They got a better player. They, like you mentioned, defense. Donovan Mitchell. All due respect to
true?
Paolo Banchero, but Donovan Mitchell. You look at his numbers, the points he's putting up. He's not a first tier superstar, but he's a second tier superstar. He's an
Mhm.
all star. I know Banchero. I guess made the All Star game, but he's a better player. I think the Cavs. I mean, I don't think it's going to be an easy series, but 195 is not like heavy favorite. I like the Cavs in that series because of
Mm.
Donovan Mitchell. We've seen him deliver big playoff moments, the spider as they call him, have some good, length around him, some good defense, like you mentioned. So yeah, I like Cleveland over Orlando, and I think obviously, um, what's the most likely sweep? Obviously, it is Boston is the most likely. I don't
Mhm.
think we'll see the sweep. Boston has always this one random weird game here and there. If it's Miami, especially, Miami has their number. They'll find a way to win a game, maybe two. I doubt two, but even Chicago, the Bulls have played the Celtics tough a few times in recent memory. I definitely think that, I'll say 5 games in that series.
Mm.
That's probably the one, but outside of that one, Tom, and that's only because of the Jimmy Butler injury. If Jimmy Butler were healthy, that could be a 6, 7 game series. So hoping for him to make a speedy recovery as well, something to think about. But no, I like the Cavs. I'm not super confident. It's a 4-5 matchup of two teams with like
Mhm.
pretty much identical records, but I do like Cleveland. I like Boston. I like Boston over Cleveland. And things are setting up well for the Celtics. I will say for their
Mhm.
playoff run because, with all those teams, we could definitely agree. I think if they're playing at their best, the Pacers are probably more talented than Cleveland or Orlando. I think obviously the Sixers and the Bucks are. They avoid the Knicks, the Bucks, the Sixers. I mean, I think if we're talking about best teams in the East, they don't play a top 4 team until the conference finals in their
Mhm.
respective conference, in my opinion. And I think Miami's the team that could have pushed them because they really do have their number. But without Jimmy Butler, that's going to be tough, even if the Heat beat the Bulls. So I think it's going to be the Celtics over the Cavs. And then we're going to have the Bucks over the Sixers. And we have Celtics and Bucks as my Eastern Conference finals.
Yeah, so that brings us to the NBA Finals. Excuse me, and I'm going to go with the Eastern Conference. I think this one is pretty easy. I would say that the Celtics making it to the finals is a much more guaranteed thing. Now, whether they can beat the Western Conference opponent is yet to be seen. But I think, I mean, you look at their plus minus, you look at their point differential, you look at efficiency of their top 5 in offensive and defensive efficiency, and they run with a pretty deep rotation, regardless of if they're going up against a healthy 76ers team or a healthy Giannis led Milwaukee Bucks team. I like the Celtics to come out of the East and represent them in the finals. And then I will go with the Nuggets as well. I mean, they're battle tested from last year's finals run. They're going to be further tested with some really tough matchups leading up to the Western Conference Finals. I think, based on tiebreakers, basically the same caliber team as the Oklahoma City Thunder. I just think that the Nuggets are a team that everybody knows their role. They really only lost one really significant player in Bruce Brown, and I think they filled his spot sufficiently to be to this point. So I like the Nuggets and the Celtics in the NBA Finals. I can't remember who I picked preseason. I probably went with Nuggets on that one, but we'll get into that in a moment. I like the Nuggets to come out of the West.
I thought you had
Did I
Boston
pick?
over Denver in preseason.
Maybe.
Maybe
Like
I'm
what
wrong.
happened
Maybe I'm
preseason. What
wrong.
happened preseason was I was leaning on the fence of Boston, Milwaukee, and then I think
Oh,
I was
maybe
like,
that's
okay,
what
I'll
I'm
go
thinking
with
of.
Milwaukee because of Lillard. But then, like pretty early on, I was like, no, Boston. I should have
I
gone with
think
my gut
I
instinct
think
and
you
stuck
had
with
Boston in
Boston.
the finals, but I don't know. Maybe we'll have to
Mhm.
go back and review the footage. I know. I had Milwaukee and Denver in my preseason pick, Tom. That I
You going
remember.
with that
So,
now?
look, sometimes there's something about a team to me that just feels off. I've never really fully trusted the Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown led Celtics. I think there's many matchups where they're a better team. They should have been in the finals last year, and they, quite frankly, choked against the Miami Heat. I think had Milwaukee had more stability, more health. I mean, obviously, I think Giannis being out for so long really hurts them. Chris Middleton has been out. They went through a coaching change during the season. Like the Kyrie and Luca thing. The Kyrie and Luca thing did not work year one. It worked year two. Now there's rumors of Dame leaving Milwaukee right off the bat after this season. We'll see if that happens or not. I think this Milwaukee team has the potential to beat the Celtics. I think they're a better collection of players than Boston, but I think it just hasn't timed out well for them because I think the injuries to Giannis, I mean, we'll see where does he come back? Is he 80%? Is he 90%? I think that series is a total toss up to me, Tom. Could go either way. I just think that Boston simply right now is more healthy, and it's hard for me to pick against them because it kind of reminds me of the series a couple years ago where Boston beat Milwaukee in a 7-game series. Chris Middleton wasn't there. Milwaukee was a little bit banged up. Boston ultimately goes through. I think we'll see something similar in this case where Milwaukee really pushes them. There's a lot of close games where it's not easy. But, I mean, Boston does have the best record for a reason. They do have
Hmm.
a really, really good lineup, like you mentioned. I mean, Tatum, Brown are awesome players. Porzingis is a really good number three. I think he's found his niche as the number three, as opposed to having to be the number two or the number one. I think he works better as a number three on a contender. Drew Holiday is a very solid player, whether he's your fourth or fifth scoring option.
Hmm.
We know he adds defense. We know he adds passing. We know he adds playoff experience, leadership, so on and so forth. I am a little worried about their jump shooting. I think they're a team that's very reliant on jump shots. I think they don't get as many easy buckets as some of these other teams. And I have seen Tatum have some really bad games on the biggest stage. So there is some massive question marks for me for the Boston Celtics, for sure. I don't know. I would say they're not a shoe-in. I think their record was actually better than they are. I think it was the product of them being healthy pretty much the whole year and us seeing, Giannis, Embiid, all these injuries in the East, all these injuries across the NBA. Why was Boston so good, Tom? Because for the most part, they were healthy the whole season. I don't think this is like what do they get? 66 wins? What do they get this year?
It
They
was
won a
definitely 60 plus. Yeah,
they won 64 games. Like
yeah.
this is not a team that is, in my opinion, good enough to typically win 64 games. But a lot of things went their way this year. And I think the Eastern Conference playoff tournament seeding is going their way. Because I mean, regardless of Embiid and Giannis, I mean, I think both of these guys uh we can't say they're 100%. Embiid looks good, but we've seen him, he's coming off an injury. He gets hurt a lot. Giannis gets hurt a lot. Those two big dudes will be banging hard in the previous game. whereas Boston has a little bit easier series. I think it just matches up well for them to make the finals, but I don't think I'm as high on Boston as you are.
Mhm.
I'm picking Boston because of matchups, because of injuries, because of depth, because of home court, these like external factors. I want to pick Milwaukee. I really think had Giannis stayed healthy, had they had more time to get this together, him and Dame, more time to gel, I think that duo could have been more refined going into the playoffs. I don't like the fact that they're still finding themselves in the playoffs, if that makes sense. So I'll pick
Mhm.
Boston, but I am not very confident. I'll put it that way to make the NBA
Sure.
Finals.
Sure. So in that case, we're both going Celtics Nuggets because you have Nuggets out of the West, right?
Yeah, Nuggets and Mavs is a compelling series. Again, I think the Mavericks are going to push Denver, 6, 7 games. It would not surprise me if Dallas
They just don't have an
uh,
answer for
makes
Jokic.
that run. That's the main thing. They don't have an answer for
Yeah.
Jokic because I think Luka Doncic, like, he is really, really good. But I think kind of like with Jokic, even to some extent, kind of like with Embiid, like these guys that are mega stars, top 5 players in the league, we're the way our culture is, Tom. I'm not this way personally because you know me very well. Rings matter, making your teammates matter, but I put less emphasis on rings than any other
Mhm.
sports personality out there. We're looking at all-time individual greatness. Sports are a team game. It's not down to one guy. I don't look at who's the GOAT, who's got the most rings, that guy's the GOAT. I don't really look at that way myself, but I think a lot of our society does. And I think there's a lot of like still, I don't know the right word to use, question marks, kind of like that exalting to the next tier superstar, like question marks around Embiid, question marks around Luka Doncic. And I think Luka's going to prove these question marks these playoffs. I think that ultimately, like you said, I don't see anybody on the Mavericks that could guard Jokic. I think Jokic is such a beast. He can do so many things. I
Mhm.
think he's going to be the reason why Denver wins and makes the finals ultimately. But I would not be the least bit surprised if the Dallas Mavericks made it. I would also not be
Mm.
surprised if the Suns made it or if the Lakers made it. If the Nuggets could lose the first round, Tom, that is not
Sure.
inconceivable. I think the
Uh,
Lakers, Suns, and Mavericks, those 3 teams, I like them a lot. I like them enough that if if they were in the East, I would pick the Suns, Mavs, and Lakers to make the NBA
mm,
Finals. That's how good I feel about those
interesting.
teams and how unconfident I am about the East. The Boston Celtics, to me, are probably the 5th or 6th best team in a 7-game series in the league. They just happen to be in the significantly easier conference because the West is hashtag Herbie fully loaded, man. Holy cow.
Well, I don't know if you took my advice about the Lakers playoff odds a couple weeks ago as a little bit of a future, but if you're interested in perhaps cheering for the Lakers, plus 285 for a series win, the Nuggets minus 370. That is the longest series odds that's currently posted.
But the
Probably
Boston
only
one not
because,
posted yet.
yeah, the Boston and OKC are not posted as well. I imagine those would probably be
I doubt
longer,
OKC would be.
maybe,
I
but
doubt it.
definitely Boston against whoever they're facing would be longer. But yeah, go ahead and dabble, splash a little, a unit or two here or there on it. So that brings us to finals picks. And I got to tell you, comment,
We have the same matchup.
I still don't know if I'm decided on this one. I know that you are sold and convinced on the Denver Nuggets, and in a
If they
vacuum,
get
I am
there.
too.
If they get there. I'm
Well,
convinced on
yeah,
the Western Conference team.
yeah, like that's the caveat and everything. We will be reselecting, reseeding our teams as we go through the NBA
Sure.
playoffs as new information comes to light. The problem is like I really like both these teams a lot, and I really like a lot of players and how these teams are built because both
Sure.
teams utilize deep rotations. They have a lot of depth, a lot of guys that are in well defined roles. I'll go ahead and lean ever so slightly to the Boston Celtics on this one. I think that they have
Ooh.
enough size with Porzingis, Horford. You can even go farther down the depth chart with Xavier Tillman. You've got a little bit of size that you can throw at Jokic again, not to stop him, but just to prevent different mismatches from taking place. You can maybe, mix in a little bit of 1v1, not necessarily have to double him off the ball or anything. And then you've got plenty of ball handlers. I know Jaylen Brown, his assist to turnover ratio isn't great, but he is able to get his own shot. Of course, Jason Tatum is as well. Derek White, an unheralded, a really strong role player. Drew Holiday, my guy, of course, is my favorite player in the NBA. And even if you throw in like Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard, you've got like enough decent depth that you can match up with that same kind of depth that Denver has. I think this is going to be a haymaker throwing series where it's going to go 7 games for the NBA Finals. And I have a slight, like I said, very slight lean to the Boston Celtics. But again, the Nuggets are a fantastic team as well that I rarely, if ever, am going to pick against them. This is one of those rare cases where I'm going to. Don't feel great about it ever so slightly.
Yeah, I will say one caveat, Tom. One team that I could see the Nuggets getting beat by for me is the Milwaukee Bucks. If Giannis can stay healthy, if we're talking about a guy that could, you know, again, I'm not saying he's going to guard him every time, but I would say that Jokic would have to at least guard Giannis sometimes, and Giannis would guard Jokic sometimes. That's the best matchup for a team to beat the Denver Nuggets. So if, everyone's gelling on all cylinders, if the Bucks can get to the finals, I think they can beat the Nuggets, Tom. That was my preseason pick, by the way. Bucks over Nuggets. Obviously didn't account for all the injuries in Milwaukee and all the crazy hoopla. But, for the sake of making the pick now, I'll take the Nuggets over the Celtics. Porzingis is good. He's considerably skinnier than Jokic. Like, can he really bang with him? Like, I know he's tall. He plays good defense. He's athletic. I don't think he's strong enough to stop Jokic, personally. I look at guys that maybe could do it, and I think, the first guy I think of is like Giannis, Embiid. Those are probably my first 2 guys that I think could maybe have the ability to really stop him. But Embiid, for whatever reason, seems to be afraid of Jokic. It doesn't seem to go his way. So it's kind of the same deal. I think a lot of this, to me, Tom, is I look at the size of Denver. I mean, you look at Aaron Gordon as well, Michael Porter Jr. They got some big dudes. They got some good rebounders. I think that's a team that will get some extra shots against Boston. And I think a lot of people think of Nikola Jokic as this triple-double machine, and they should, but he's still a really good scorer. He could score 27, 28 points, and he can score easy points. Really good field goal percentage, really good shots under the basket. He's got incredible touch. I think, again, something that a lot of big guys don't get enough credit when they score. Like Shaq was really good at this. Really good touch near the rim. Like Zach Edey, you're talking about him at the next level. Zach Edey has good touch near the rim. Nikola Jokic is among the best touch near the rim I've ever seen. I mean, his efficiency numbers, Tom, he can get easy baskets. Boston doesn't really have a guy that consistently do that. I know sometimes Tatum and Brown drive. I know Porzingis is a big guy, but he's not really a traditional big guy. He's more of a, I'll dunk off an easy feed or I'll stretch the floor and hit a 3. Same for Al Horford. He's not really a traditional post player at this stage in his career. So I know everyone gets obsessed with the 3, Tom, but there's something to be said about easy baskets. And I've watched the Boston Celtics over the last 3 or 4 years, and that's one of the things I really struggle with. I haven't seen them get enough easy baskets. I think even like in the NBA Finals, Steph Curry, he actually gets some easy baskets because he's such a big threat off the 3, and he's so good at dribbling. He finds ways to get layups and easy baskets. You look at the way Jason Tatum plays, he's a tough shot maker. He's a great player.
Yeah.
But he doesn't get a lot of easy baskets. And I think in a 7-game series against a really good team, the lack of ability to get easy baskets. I mean, like, LeBron James is the king of this. LeBron James, you can rely on him to get a few easy layups every game. Giannis gets a few easy layups every game. Jokic gets a few easy layups every game. These are guys that could get you buckets down low. Michael Jordan, or at least earlier in his career, he could drive to the hoop, get easy baskets. I just don't see Boston doing that. It seems like they're very 3 reliant. They're really good at 3s. I'm not saying they're not. But, the whole live by the 3, die by the 3 type thing I just I don't trust Boston for that reason, Tom. They don't get enough easy baskets. And, they could do it off their defense, the fast break points. Whenever you go up against the better teams, the teams that don't turn the ball over, that don't give you those easy fast break points, that are well coached like the Nuggets are, life gets a little bit harder in a congested 7-game series. And that's just me. I don't think this Boston team will win a championship with Tatum and Brown. Maybe they get somebody else. Maybe something changes. But the way that roster is currently constructed, I don't see the easy baskets anywhere, Tom. And I don't see Boston winning a championship unless there's an injury or something, right? Obviously, if Jokic gets hurt in the finals, that would help them win a championship. But if things, if they don't get a lot of fortunate moments like they have all year, they're not winning a championship. So I like Denver. I like the Western Conference team, whoever it is to win the championship, unless somehow Milwaukee really puts it together. Because I think if Giannis and Dame are, rolling at full strength, those two guys, if they figure it out, they could be extremely dangerous. It's just too late in the season to really figure it out now, especially with the Giannis injury.
I definitely feel like this might be Boston's kind of best chance to win a title, although I think they had a pretty decent shot against Golden State the last time that they were there and kind of squandered a bit. But a team that's definitely rolling right now is Team Casselman, as we're talking about blocks of the week. Had a 2-for-1, a 2-and-1 record, missing on that DeAndre Ayton player prop to end the year. It's just kind of like a throw, and I wasn't really sure what to do with that prop player bet, but I got a couple of hits, including plus money with the 76ers and Pelicans, both making it into the play-in tournament or having to play in the play-in tournament, I guess would be a more accurate way of putting it. The Suns overcoming the Pelicans at the end of the season. That was minus 105, and that hit. And then the 76ers at plus 135 hit as well. So 41-25, it's a pretty solid spot to be. If anybody's been tailing me, and I certainly have not been. So kudos.
The best picks on the internet. I had a coworker recently say to me, because he has been going on these betting websites and all these betting experts who give all the stats and the advice, and he's like, I keep losing. That's what he keeps saying. The betting experts, I keep losing, and I'm like, you're not listening to the right guy. Ask Tom Casselman. I don't know what it is, but this man's got the juju, the best recorded record on betting of anyone I know in the world, Tom. There might be someone ahead of you, but I've looked at betting lock records, most of the ESPN experts. You know where their record is, give or take roughly, most of them? About 500.
Probably around 500, yeah.
Around 500, which you want to be hitting, if you're placing the same amount of bets, you want to be hitting about 60% to be in the green, which I have also been hitting about 60%. You're well over 60.
62%.
Okay, so you would be in the green if you were betting, So I'm 36-29-1, 7 over, really respectable year. Just tough to compete against a guy that's 16 over. Last week was tough, although I did get barbecued on one of them. So I had the Warriors minus 13.5 at the Blazers. Warriors winning by just 8. I placed a lot of live in-game action on this game, though. I placed a live 3.5, a live 6.5. So I made my money's worth on this game, just not the original 13.5. Pelicans Kings over 215.5 points. This one I did not have to sweat. 135, 123, 258 points. I'm looking at this and I'm like, should I bet the over again on this game? I don't have it written down, but now I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? And then the one I really got barbecued on was the Red Sox and Royals under 8.5 runs. This game was 2-1 heading to the 8th inning. And you know what? I reasoned this out, by the way. I should have bet the 5-inning line, because I said that there was 2 good starters early. Their ERAs were really good. They're really, meshing well, and the starters did their job. But the bullpens very much did not. Ends 9-4 Orioles, 13 runs, and I think 10 of them coming in the last few innings, counting the extras, Tom. So still 7 over. I was up to about 10 over, though. So last couple weeks, I've kind of backed the reality a little bit. Although I won a ton of money this weekend betting on Messi. And
There you
I would
go.
advise for the guys listening, this is a really good betting lock of the week. I don't have it for this show because it's now ballooned back to minus 155 for Messi to score a
Mm,
goal. I know we go at minus like 130, minus 125 or better.
sure,
And I
yeah.
don't really pick the Messi games on this program just because he usually plays on Saturday. We record on Thursday, sometimes Tuesday, sometimes earlier in the week. And I always got to make sure he's playing. But if you're
Hmm.
listening to this program, parlay Messi to score, Miami to win, or just bet Messi to score every game because he scored like every game but one in the last six or something. So it's kind of easy and free money to bet on Lionel Messi. As for
There you
this
go.
week, Tom, I am going to stick with ones not involving Inter Miami. I will go Kings minus 1.5 over the Pelicans in Friday's playing tournament game. I think you said it's -1 on Bovada. Is that right? Let me check my.
Go ahead, take it at -1 because I will be doing the same thing.
All
So
right, so I'll
we'll
take.
be riding alongside each
All
other on
right,
that
I'll
one.
take it at -1, even though it is -1.5 on DraftKings, my preferred sports book. Either way, whether it's one or two, I think the Kings win by two or more. They probably win by more than five, honestly, in this
Mm,
game. I mean, no Zion for the Pelicans. New Orleans' best player got hurt late in that Laker playing game. Brandon Ingram, the Pelicans' second best player, coming off an injury. He was 4 for 12 last game. He played like less than half the game. Fox and Sabonis, a great 1-2 duo for the Kings. Obviously, it helps when your two best players are healthy and the other team's two best players are not healthy. Kings are a very good road team. The Pelicans are like a game over 500 at home. So the home court advantage, like they're actually a better team on the road than at home, New Orleans is, which is kind of a weird conundrum. So I'll take the Kings -1 over the Pelicans. I will take the Bulls Heat. I see it now at 206.5, the over under. Oh, 205, I see it at. Okay, I'll
hmm.
take it at 205. Is that what you have it too, Tom?
That's what I have. Yep.
All right, so Bulls Heat over 205 points. 3 out of 4 meetings this year, Tom. It's went higher than that total. 218 points, 240, 234. I know Jimmy Butler's out. I know that's going to make the game slower. I know that it's a playoff setting. Miami doesn't score a lot. They play, good defense. But if you look at their totals for the season, Heat total points scored and allowed, they average at 218 this year. The Bulls total 226. This last Bulls game was way over that. 205 points in the modern NBA with the pace we see. That is very little points. I think
Hmm.
it's going to go over. Bulls Heat over 205 points like it did most of the meetings in the regular season. Then lastly, I'm going to go Lakers +7.5 at the Nuggets. I think this will be a competitive series. I did ultimately pick Denver to win, but as I mentioned, LA would not surprise me if they win. I think the Lakers know how big game one is. I think LeBron James is a guy that's played in the playoffs for many years. He's had so much playoff success. He knows very well if you win game one on the road, you've got a series. So I think the Lakers come out hungry. They've played really good basketball down the stretch. The Lakers have. I think LeBron and Davis show up. I think the role players show up. I would probably lean Denver to win the game, but with 7.5 points, that's actually
Hmm.
kind of a big spread in this matchup. I know, again, the Nuggets have had their number, but a lot of these games have been close. I think this one's close. Lakers cover 7.5 points.
Yeah, so we are one in the same on having that Kings -1 line against the Pelicans. I'll go over to the other playing game and give me the Chicago Bulls +2 against the Heat. I mean, this could very well go against me, and shame on me for paying attention to the Bulls as much as I have this season and
I've enjoyed
knowing
it.
how mercurial that they are. They could very easily wet the bed on this one and lose by a significant margin to the Miami Heat. But I'm going to have them winning this game. I'm going to have them picking up that 8th seed, and of course, to do so, they would have to cover that +2 line. So I'll go ahead and take that. If you want to be a little bit more adventurous, +105 just on the money line to have them win. I'll stick with just +2 in this case. And then my last one, I'm going to go with the Pacers -1 in Milwaukee for Game One. Giannis is going to be missing at least the first couple of games of the series, which means this is Indiana's time to pounce. This is where they're going to have to come out, and if they're going to win the series, they have to try to do it early before Giannis comes back in full strength. So give me the Pacers -1. Bucks on the season have had a really good defense, but that is in no small part due to Giannis and just all the ground that he can cover. He's so unique that he's one of those players that's really difficult to replace or have like a next man up type of mentality. The Bucks are kind of similar to the Heat in the standpoint that they have like solid role players that do step up. I mean, we're going to see plenty of Bobby Portis, I am sure. But give me the Pacers -1 in winning Game 1 of this series.
Yeah, that's a toss-up. That's one I'm staying away from, Tom. But definitely agree with the Kings one. I'm also staying away from the Bulls one, a total toss-up. But knowing how your picks go, if it's a toss-up, pick Tom Casselman. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see about that. Trivia time, Kamen. What do you have? You said it was, I believe, at the beginning of the show, Victor Wembanyama based?
Yes, it is. King Victor became the first rookie with 1,500 points, 250 assists, and 250 blocks in the same season. He was the first rookie, only the fourth guy ever to do it, period. Can you name the other three guys in any season that have done the 1,500 points, 250 assists, and 250 blocks?
Okay, so I'm going to go with LeBron James.
Surprisingly not LeBron. I'm guessing it's the blocks
Okay.
that did him in. Because think about it, 80 blocks, 82 games a season. You got to average like 3 blocks a year.
Okay.
So LeBron, that's
Okay,
probably
so
what LeBron
Will
was
Chamberlain
missing.
would be my next one.
I knew you were going to guess him. He's not, although I don't know what year the stat became official.
Yeah, blocks. I forgot they didn't always record that.
Blocks
so,
were not always official. He also may have missed out on assists. I don't know, but I don't have him down on this one. I'll go ahead and give you one clue that's going to help you narrow the field. And I think it kind of makes sense because, again, 250 blocks. We're looking at more than 3 blocks per game. So all these guys are big guys. There's no –
So
they're all
Tim Duncan
not
would
Tim
be my next
Duncan,
one. Not Tim Duncan. Kevin Garnett.
not KG. They're all centers. So definitely like
all centers.
Big guys.
It's the assisting that's really throwing me then because you got to have like at least some touch and some ability to deliver. So I don't think Shaq. I'm going to say Shaq, but I don't think it's him.
Not Shaq, although I imagine he was probably really close.
Yeah, because it would have to be because you said it's 200 blocks and 200 assists.
250.
50. Okay, yeah. So it's
that's
like
you got to average like 3 blocks a season and play all the games. More than 3 blocks. Hakeem Olajuwon's one of them.
Okay, good. Got Hakeem the Dream. So I got 3 more to go. Would it be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? Did he have enough?
Kareem? You only got 1 more to go now. We got Kareem. So there's 4 Victors, one of them.
Oh, gotcha,
so
gotcha.
Kareem Hakeem, it rhymes. Victor Wembanyama, and then there's 1 more.
1 more. Points, assists, blocks.
He's a Hall of Famer, obviously.
Yeah, it got to be great to have those sorts of numbers. So in the Hall of Fame means that he's done playing, has been for a minute.
Yes.
Would it be Ben Wallace? Let's see.
Did he score that many points, Tom? I don't think so.
Yeah. This is tough. I'm kind of like blank. Like maybe David Robinson.
David Robinson.
Really?
Yeah, that's the Admiral.
All right, one with the wrong big time spur.
The wrong Twin Tower, right?
I knew you were going to.
By the way, I guessed the guys you're going to guess. I knew you were going to guess Shaq, Wilt, Tim Duncan. I knew you were going to get these because these are like it's not that hard, but it's just like can you get it right away? So every guy you guessed, I was like LeBron, and you're going to guess all those guys.
Yeah, so. It's guys that can do a little bit of everything. And speaking of guys that do a little bit of everything, as you mentioned, Nicholas Batum hit 6 3-pointers to help lead the 76ers over the Miami Heat. Nicholas Batum at 6'8". You know, we don't typically associate 3-point shots with taller guys in NBA history. So he is 4th all time in players who are 6'8" or taller in three-pointers made. Can you name the three players who are ahead of him with that distinction, with that achievement?
Kevin Durant,
Kevin Durant is one of them, yes.
LeBron James,
LeBron James is the second one.
and Dirk Nowitzki.
Not Dirk Nowitzki, no.
Okay.
I knew you'd get two pretty easily. The third
Yeah,
one, it'll
Durant was
probably
the
be like a
no-brainer.
Doy. Yeah.
A what?
Would be kind of like a Doy, like, of course, he fits the
Oh,
list, but you're not
okay.
necessarily going to think of him.
Okay, so over 6'8",
Hmm.
and so
Made
he's
a lot
top
of three
four.
pointers.
Made a lot of three-pointers. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, Durant was the easy one for me. Like, as soon as I heard
Yeah.
that, I was like, Durant.
Yeah,
Durant.
and I'm pure volume and like what he's worked on his game. LeBron was another one. I knew you would
Yeah,
get
yeah.
to
Oh,
right
yeah.
away.
LeBron, he's played for so long, too.
Yeah.
I was like, how tall is LeBron? Is he like six? I was
I'm
almost
sorry.
like worried. How tall is LeBron? I was like, is he 6'8"?
I
I
think
think he
he's listed
is.
officially as 6'8" or 6'9", something like
Okay,
that.
yeah, because I was like, is he tall enough? But I was like, I have to guess him. So, I for whatever reason, I thought Dirk would not be it because again, in his era, guys didn't take as many threes.
Yeah, he was definitely more
So,
that long to mid range too.
yeah, that's why. That's why again, I think of Larry Bird, but he didn't take enough threes. He didn't play enough
Nope.
seasons, so it's
Hmm.
not Larry Bird. Um, Nicholas Batum is fourth on this list. That's impressive.
Hmm.
6'8". I don't know why I'm thinking in my head. It's probably a small forward, but I don't know. Is it a small
Um,
forward?
it is not a small forward. No,
So it's a power forward, probably. Is
it's a
it
big
Brooke?
man.
Is it Brooke Lopez?
Not Brook Lopez.
Okay,
I kind of go back and forth because power forward centers kind of like hybridized in the
sure.
modern NBA. So that's another little bit of a clue
I don't think
for
he's played
you.
enough
Relatively
seasons,
modern.
but is it Jokic?
Not Jokic.
He hasn't played enough years. That's the thing. Because he'll probably
Right.
get on that eventually. He doesn't make a
Yeah,
ton of
he'll
threes,
ascend
but he
that
makes
list. Yeah.
enough. Um, hmm. 3-pointers, 6'8", a big man. Huh.
Hmm.
Again, I don't think he took enough threes, but I'm not even sure if he's 6'8", but his name comes to mind. I'm pretty sure it's not him, but I'll just throw it out there anyway. Robert Ory.
Not Robert Ory.
Because if Batum's on that list, that's already pretty random, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah,
Uh
this guy was pretty good, especially as kind of like a solo act. Took more of an ensemble role later on to win a title.
Solo act, took on an ensemble role to win a title
Hmm.
as a big guy. So it's someone who was good, then later in his career probably wanted to win a championship, went somewhere to help somebody win a championship.
Uh, Not a ring chaser. He definitely was acquired to be a complementary piece.
Okay. Acquired. So it's an NBA
Mhm.
champion.
Yes.
A guy that I would have seen win a championship. I would have watched
Yes.
pretty much the whole series or
Oh, ardently, you would have been watching the series.
oh, okay. Yeah, he's too short. No, it's not him. Okay. I would have been so I'm guessing this is probably a guy that played with LeBron James.
Yes, sir.
A guy that played with LeBron James, okay. Is it Shane Battier?
Not Shane Battier.
Because Ray Allen is too
More
short.
recent.
Ray
Yes,
Allen is
Ray
too
Allen is
short.
like 6'4", 6'5". Yeah.
Yeah. Um, More recent.
Hmm.
LeBron James guy, more recent. I mean, I just don't know. I guess he takes a lot of threes. It wouldn't be Anthony Davis, would it?
Not Davis.
No, he takes too many. He's not good enough at threes to get it. Okay, more recent. Is he a Laker guy?
Not on the Lakers. No.
Not on
I'm
the
actually. I got to
Lakers.
see if still playing.
Well, then it's not. Oh, Kevin Love.
It is Kevin Love. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Isn't he on the Cavs?
He might
I think
be.
Kevin Love is on the
Yeah, he
Cavs.
did play this year.
I know he was on the Heat recently. I think he's on the
Heat.
Cavs. Or is he on the
He
Heat
was on the
now?
Cavs. He's on the Heat now. He was on the Cavs from 15 to 23, helped them win that 2016
Yeah,
championship over the
Miami. Yeah.
Warriors. He's in Miami right now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Kevin Love.
Okay.
All right, into statements of the week. I'm going to jump off here with something that really always stinks in professional sports, and that is that the Arizona Coyotes, an NHL team, are have essentially played their last game in Arizona. They're most likely moving to Utah. That hasn't been locked in, but it just always sucks when sports franchises, because I'm a bit of a traditionalist. I'm a bit of a fan of, you have a big fan base, and moving kind of uproots that fan base. And it's usually done for kind of
I don't think they
superficial,
had a big
make
fan base
money,
though.
get free tax dollars. I mean, enough though. I mean, they've been there for like decade plus type of thing, but like it sucks in general when it happens. I know in the NHL it's a little bit different because the fan base isn't as large as say the NBA, MLB, or NFL, but look at the Raiders. Name me a more dedicated community to their fans
Mm-hmm.
than the Raiders were in Oakland.
Well, and the
San
A's league
Diego
going to a
Chargers
minor
to a
league
lesser
stadium
extent.
is worse, I think.
The A's, yes, trying to go to Vegas, and with that kind of falling through with those taxpayer dollars and what they can or cannot get approved for, they're now going to be playing in Sacramento for the foreseeable future.
Yes.
I mean, I understand that there are some instances where it makes sense to move teams, but by and large, it's done for the wrong reasons, in my opinion. It's done for getting publicly funded stadiums. I mean, it sucked when the Supersonics became the
Supersonics is the
Oklahoma,
worst.
the City Thunder. Like,
That's
it
such a
just,
passionate, city.
yeah.
You look at the Mariners, the Sounders in soccer, the Kraken.
Hmm.
Now that's such a passionate, city.
Yeah, and
That's the
often,
most egregious one, the Supersonics for
and,
me.
and oftentimes, it's also
Kevin Durant's
shameful
first
because of
team.
what happens. Yeah, Kevin
He
Durant
was a
started out there,
rookie,
and
Seattle Supersonic.
yeah, it's just shameful to see what happens. I mean, we might be seeing it on the south side of Chicago with the White Sox. I mean, we're looking at attendances that are, ticket number might be a little bit higher because you have season ticket holders. But in terms of people actually going to the ballpark, you're saying maybe 1,000 people
We got to go.
showing
I
up for
heard
the
you can get
Chicago
like
White Sox.
$10 tickets day of, Tom. I was
I
told
don't.
that this.
I'm not
I was
even
told
willing to do that.
I
I'm
was
not.
told the service fees cost more than the tickets, depending on where you sit.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not really in the mindset of giving Jerry Reinsdorf owned teams any money. Like I'm fairly disconnected from that, which is really sad because I mean the White Sox have a smaller but still passionate fan base, and yet I think they have been done a disservice. I think it just does a disservice
Go to a game to
to
watch a
fan
good player
communities.
for $10.
What good player?
Like
So on the
not
visiting team,
a visiting team. I do that all the time, Tom.
not in. I am much more likely to take my money, go out to Schaumburg, Illinois, and watch the Boomers play. I feel
Okay.
that's a much better use of my time and resources.
Okay.
See, it
That's
just
fair.
it just always stinks when that happens because I know it's not necessarily a huge fan base in Arizona for the Coyotes, but it always stinks when that sort of thing happens when you have something that's growing a little bit, and then it gets uprooted and moved elsewhere, and you have to start that process all over again. And unfortunately, hopefully, it doesn't turn fans away from the game in general. Like if the White Sox were to leave, for example, I would still consume baseball. I don't know who I would pick as like my team, so to speak, but
Not the Nashville White
you
Sox.
know, what's up?
The Nashville White Sox.
Yeah, no, not. I don't think I'd be overly
Okay.
connected to that.
All
It
right.
would be, it would just be a different experience as a fan. Hopefully, for folks in Arizona, they still stick with the NHL. Hopefully, for folks in Oakland, even though they've been done very, very wrong by multiple sports entities, that they still are interested in the NFL and MLB. I know NFL is a lot easier to stay connected to, but with the way that they've been treated in Oakland, I think it's been atrocious as well.
Sure. Yeah, always tough. I do know they're moving to Salt Lake City, I believe, which is a very, very passionate, place. The Utah Jazz, you know, since Stockton and Malone have been largely average to mediocre, and they're still getting some big attendances. So I think that city's going to embrace the hockey team. They
I
don't
hope
have
so, yeah.
baseball. They only got NBA. The hockey should, hopefully be embraced there. All right. I got to breathe for this statement because this is a tough one for me. I absolutely hate to make the statement of the week because this is a guy, as a fan of the Warriors the last few years, a guy that's been a very, very important part of the team, a guy that, I think for a little bit might have been even underrated, but he's going to be a free agent this season, and it is time for the Golden State Warriors to move on from Klay Thompson. It's a business world. You got to have the right pieces. Klay Thompson, is no longer a true splash brother with Stephen Curry. He was 0 for 10 in the play-in game against the Sacramento Kings. This whole Game 6 Klay aura that we've seen, over the years. He definitely is not the same player on the biggest stage in the biggest moments. And you want to get rid of him before he completely goes downhill because he's on the way down. His second lowest season right now in three-point percentage, 38.7%, which is okay, but it's obviously not anything crazy good for a guy that we're used to having as a great, great three-point shooter. He had his third lowest point total. The 2-point totals lower than that were his first two seasons. 43.2% from the field overall, also one of the worst in his career. The efficiency isn't there. Now, he's not there in the big moments. He's always been a streaky shooter. That's the biggest difference between him and Steph. Steph is better because everyone's got off games, Tom. It's going to happen to everybody, including Steph. Klay, for those great shooters, probably has more off games than most. He's a guy that's very feast and famine, but it's more so than ever feast and famine for the Warriors. And obviously, we knew him as a great defensive player. He's getting a little bit older. Not the same impact on that side of the floor as well. He's just not the same player. He's had so many injuries. Age catches up. I think he could be a solid guy if he's your third, fourth option. But I think at Golden State, he is still their number 2 option. Stephen Curry needs a reliable number 2 option. Steph is 36 years old. He was the clutchest player in the league this last season, put up big numbers. He is still a top 10 player in the league, if not a top 5 player in the league. With the right teammates, with the right system, he can still compete for a championship, but he's got a window of about 2 or 3 years. Time catches up to everybody. It's going to catch up to Steph like it has to Klay. So they got to utilize the last 2 or 3 years of Steph Curry and get him a co-star, get him a great player. And, maybe some of these young guys, Moses Moody's look good. Jonathan Kuminga's look good. Those guys are at least as good as Klay, and they're on the way up in their career, whereas Klay's on the way down. I don't know. I'm guessing he's not going to ask for a super max. I don't know how that's going to work. I guess a max deal, not a super max, because he wouldn't be all NBA. But he's probably going to command a little bit more money than what he's worth because of who he is. He's a great player. He's won multiple championships. He's one of the best shooters to ever play the game. But he is not the same player he was. And at this stage in his career, Tom, I think he's only going to be on the way down. Is it possible in the right system, in the right fit, he has a little bit of rejuvenation? Possible. Like, let's just say he goes to a team of like 3 superstars, then he gets only open looks all the time. Maybe, right? Maybe. But he's not a number 2 option for an NBA team. And that's kind of part of the problem with the Warriors. They were the 10 seed because they didn't have a number 2. All these players, Durant and Booker, Kyrie and Luka, LeBron and Anthony Davis, Jokic and Murray, Tatum and Brown, Giannis and Lillard, Embiid and Maxey. I mean, most of these teams that are legitimate contenders in the playoffs have 2 really, really good options, 2 really, really good scorers. Klay Thompson was a great number 2. He no longer is a great number 2. He's a solid player that you want to be your 3rd, 4th, 5th leading scorer, but not your number 2. Golden State's got to make a tough decision. but I think it's time to move on from Klay Thompson. He knows it too, by the way.
Mhm.
His last game against Sacramento, he stood on the court longer, took it all in. I think he knows his time is up in Golden State as well. I do want to thank Klay for all that he's done. But that's how it's a business. You got to focus on the
Mhm.
present, and he is not presently good enough to be the number 2 option for Golden State. And he's probably going to command money that's a number 2 type option. So they got to move on from him, Tom.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a challenging enterprise for the Warriors how they navigate going forward because I mean, there's a couple different ways you can try to look at this sort of thing. One could be, I mean, just from a cap perspective, the fact that they have the types of contracts that they have. I don't know how you easily replace Clay Thompson. Like, I don't really think you can sign a free agent or something along those lines. Like, this is going to call for some significant overhaul if the Warriors want to have the stomach of doing that sort of thing. I wouldn't blame them if they wanted to go on a little bit of a nostalgia tour and say, hey, we've won titles with these guys. We're going to hang on to Clay Thompson. We're going to keep him here. And like this is how these guys' careers are going to end, but it's going to end with them being Golden State Warriors through and through. I think while that's not necessarily going to win a title or anything along those lines, I still think that it provides some compelling attendance really for a fan base. I know it's always a challenge when you see like, I mean, I didn't see this, but for example, Willie Mays ending his career in a Mets jersey, Frank Thomas ending his career playing for the Athletics and for the Blue Jays, and it just feels a little bit odd. I
Allen
wouldn't be
Iverson with a bunch of
surprised.
different teams at the end.
Yeah, yeah. Well, at the very least, he got traded though to like the Denver Nuggets for like, and he was still good for a decent stretch. I'm talking like the
He was
last
a
couple
Grizzly
of
and a
years.
Piston at the end
Yeah,
too.
that too. So it's
Yeah.
it's one of those things where I wouldn't be
Emmett
surprised if
Smith
the
to the
Warriors want to do that.
Cardinals.
Emmett Smith of the Cardinals, that's a good one where it's just like you always associate him with with being a cowboy, but there's a little bit of that aspect of fandom too, where like, yes, we want our teams to win, but we also like to have guys to cheer for, and we want to have guys that we kind of have some sort of rapport, some sort of identity with them. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Warriors wanted to go that option. Also, again, if that's just the most expedient thing to do as far as propping open a potential window, because how are you going to add somebody? I mean, like, are they going to do some sort of deal where it's a sign and trade with Klay Thompson? Well, who's going to sign and trade for a player who is on the back nine of his career and isn't a superstar player, is going to command a superstar contract, and then you're also going to give up players, draft picks, etc.
Now, there's not necessarily a megastar, but I'm looking at some of the free agent list here in the NBA. Like if they were to
Mhm.
get like a Malik Monk, who's a young explosive player, I think he'd probably be better than Clay right now. I'll give you one. DeMar
Mm.
DeRozan as a veteran. If the Bulls don't want to get DeMar DeRozan, I think he's an upgrade to Klay Thompson at this stage in his
Well, yeah,
career.
but like, it's like, are you saying like for a sign and trade or pure free agency? Because I think that the Warriors are pretty bumped up
These are
against the cap,
well, I'm looking
so
at
I think
free
they'd have
agents
to
right
sign and
now.
trade. Because
I'm looking
like
at
DeMar DeRozan,
Buddy
for example,
Hield,
would command a significant deal akin to Klay Thompson, and for like
but
bird
he's
right
better
reasons, they
right
wouldn't.
now.
Well,
DeMar
yeah, but I'm
DeRozan, I
saying
think, could be a really good number 2 option
what
on
I'm
the right
saying is that the
team.
Warriors can't simply sign him, though. Is what I'm saying. Like for the amount of money that DeMar DeRozan or Malik Monk, the Warriors would not be able to fit that cap wise.
I don't know how the cap is for them, to be honest. You probably know more. You're Mr.
With
Cap. But
Yeah,
I'll tell you,
basically, they like
Tom,
sign and trade would
when
have to
there's a
be the
will,
best
there's a way.
option.
They could do a sign and trade. Obviously, there's the draft. I know there's not a great draft class necessarily,
Mhm.
but it just, I get your point of the nostalgia tour, but I think you don't want to waste Steph Curry's last few years. I think it's time
Mm.
to try to get him an upgrade. It might cost you, but so would keeping Klay Thompson. That would cost you too. I really
Yeah,
don't
there's
think that the price tag on DeMar DeRozan or Malik Monk would be significantly higher than that of Klay Thompson. So
that could be.
we'll
I mean,
definitely see.
as a Bulls fan, if it were something like, okay, the Warriors are going to sign Klay Thompson to like a bloated 1 year contract and sign and trade for like Zach LaVine, would you want Klay Thompson on the Chicago Bulls then? I imagine that's the sort of thing the Warriors would go
Maybe.
for
I
if they're
mean,
going
the
for like a
Bulls are not
multi-year.
like they're not a championship contender. I think it'd be
Mhm.
fun to have Clay. I mean, Zach LaVine, I know sometimes fit matters. Zach LaVine is a really good basketball player. I know, people have kind of like really went against him in Chicago the last couple of years.
Hmm.
But sometimes the change of scenery does help. He's still younger. I wouldn't necessarily be upset because, I'm a Bulls fan, I'm a Warrior fan, I'm a Laker fan. Those are kind of the teams that I gravitate towards,
Hmm.
Tom. Zach LaVine wouldn't be bad. That could work out for both teams, maybe.
Hmm.
I think at some point you just need to try to help Steph Curry because I think he's a guy that deserves a chance at another championship. I think you see
Hmm.
what the Lakers have done for LeBron James, and LeBron, like, I think LeBron is a greater overall player than Steph Curry, but if we're talking about the pantheon of Lakers versus the pantheon of Warriors, I definitely think that Steph Curry has done considerably more
Hmm.
for the Golden State
Sure.
Warriors than LeBron James has done for the Los Angeles Lakers. So I get your point. Like, do they owe it to Clay to have a nostalgia tour? I can sort of buy that. I think they owe it to Steph more than Clay to actually give him the best chance to win. Another
Hmm.
guy, speaking of trades, Draymond Green, he's just almost feels like he's overstayed his welcome. They have some young pieces. There could be multiple things they do. Maybe Clay's not the only guy they get rid of. Maybe Draymond Green goes as well. I just think they got to do something. I don't necessarily have the exact solution,
Hmm.
but I think there's enough good players in the league, at this stage in their careers that are better than Clay, that are better than Draymond. I feel like they can finagle something. I know they lost their really good GM. He's working for ESPN now. So I don't know how good the current GM staff is,
Hmm.
but when there's a will, there's a way. And they got to give Steph Curry at least a chance to win another championship. Because it's weird because they were going to blow this up a couple years ago. And then they had that crazy run where Clay kind of had that last, haul. Steph Curry played out of this world in the finals. Andrew Wiggins came out of nowhere.
Hmm.
He's the guy to me that's a big X factor because he had a really bad season this year and he was pretty good the last few years. I don't know what the heck happened to Andrew Wiggins. I don't know what happened to Kevon Looney. These guys just went downhill in a hurry, Tom. But I don't know the exact solution, but I think the solution does not involve Klay Thompson as your number two scoring option. And the Warriors got to find a legitimate number two for Steph Curry. They can do better. I'm not
Hmm.
saying they're going to win a championship, but they got to give the best they can to help out Steph to win a championship if he can. So,
Agreed. Yeah, I think
all
that'll
right.
do it then for our
Well,
program
good
today.
show. Good show. I know next week we'll have our NFL draft special. I know it's the big talking point on ESPN.
Hmm.
We haven't actually talked that much NFL draft because we want to save all of it for one show. Don't want to revisit the same topics over and over. But it's going to be a pretty thorough NFL draft preview. That'll be the lead next week in the show, and the lead the week after is the recap to it. So a lot of NFL draft stuff the next couple weeks. We'll be touching on some of the NBA playoffs as well, kind of as that second topic, probably the next couple of weeks. And then as we get deeper in the playoffs, more of a focus back to basketball. We'll probably touch on baseball at some point in the coming
Hmm.
weeks as well. Looking forward to a lot of fun chatter. Maybe even make a Stanley Cup prediction. Maybe we'll get Tom
Yeah.
Casselman to make a
Uh-huh.
hockey prediction. Not sure if that's going to happen, but we can try. We can always try, Tom. So thank you so much for co-hosting, being on the show with me, Tom. Thank you so much to everyone who takes the time out of the day to watch, to listen. You guys are awesome, and we'll see you next week, guys.